It's no secret that New Zealand's economy is struggling. Our productivity is going backwards and we're in dire need of a switch up. So how do we fix it? I sat down with some of the experts to figure out how we can build cheaper, faster and better. Be honest, do you feel as if things aren't that great?
The curse of business in New Zealand is short-term thinking.
Does it feel like we're at a standstill?
Between 2020 and 2024, average productivity, labour productivity levels across the economy were flat.
In some cases, could it be worse?
We are spending more and getting less.
Or even stuck in reverse?
We're kind of blissfully unaware of the fact that as a country we're going backwards, sleepwalking into, being a poorer country over time. That's the reality.
New Zealand has a P problem, and for once, we're not talking about the drug. We're talking about productivity. How do we maximise the results from the same effort? We need to solve that problem as our population ages and there are fewer younger workers supporting more older ones in retirement. How do we get faster, better and cheaper?
So at the very simplest level, productivity is just about how much you get out of a production process relative to what you put into it.
Peter Nuns leads the economics team at the Infrastructure Commission, so this is him really stepping it down to simplify.
Betty's got a van and some tools and she's building some houses. One year she builds one house, and then the next year some customers come back and say, we'd like you to build 2 houses next year. So Betty hires Barry, gets a second van, gets a second set of tools, and they build 2 houses together. In that case, the total output from the firm has doubled, but the amount of inputs that the firm's using to produce the output has doubled as well. Productivity hasn't changed. The year after that, Betty and Barry are working pretty well together. They're getting some experience in doing the job. They've maybe taken some training and new methods of building, and they build 3 houses. That's productivity growth. They're building 50% more houses with the same inputs. And so when you're measuring productivity over time, you're looking for changes in how much is being produced relative to how much is being input into that production process from both capital and labour.
If you're looking for those changes over time in our economy, grab a magnifying glass. They are tiny. Just ask Business Desk infrastructure editor Ollie Lewis.
The common story in New Zealand is that productivity has been a problem for us for not just the last decade, but for many decades.
Stats NZ has a measure of how productive each hour of labour has been since 1996 in major sectors. The long, slow climb dipped last year. Why have we been so bad at being productive or growing productivity in this country?
Well, in my personal opinion, it's all about tax actually. As long as you could make money tax-free by buying homes and renting them out and having investment properties, that meant that there was a real incentive to build homes and you didn't really care about the cost as much because you were getting tax-free capital gains. What that means is I think the construction industry in New Zealand is going to have a long, hard look at the model that allowed them all to do okay as long as property prices kept on rising. It actually covered up a lot of cracks of inefficiency and lack of productivity. So we've had this process develop over decades that has created these perverse incentives to put most of our money into what is effectively an inefficient asset. It's great if you're living in it, I get it, but as an investment asset, it's not really contributing to the productivity of the country. We've been buying houses when we could have been building factories. We've been buying houses when we could have been putting more money into horticulture. So there's been this massive misallocation of capital, of our savings, because the tax system has encouraged us to put money into houses. So until that changes, that won't go away.
Right, well, joining me down the line is Infrastructure New Zealand Chief Executive Nick Leggett, who helped me out trying to understand our productivity problems. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Garth.
So we're sleepwalking into a future where we're poorer, I think is pretty much how you summed it up. What has gone so wrong?
I think part of it is about what we do with the investment that we've got and what we build and what we produce for ourselves. The other part of it is what we earn overseas. And I think to go to Sam Stubbs's point, we've been very comfortable, or certainly a section of society has been very comfortable earning money off residential property investment and development. But what we actually sell, if you look overseas, we continue to drop back in comparison to the average amount of money earned per Kiwi if we compare ourselves to other nations of our size, Australia as well, our closest large neighbour, and that's part of our issue as well. So the money we bring in is we're slipping back there, but actually, particularly where we invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure New Zealand did some work a couple of years ago with Infometrics, which showed that if we were able to get better value out of our infrastructure spend, and by doing that it would mean a more certain pipeline, that not just a list of projects, but lists of projects that you know were going to be funded and built and were going to be deployed into the market so they could get built quickly, we could actually save between $2 and $5 billion a year. It's getting more for the same amount of investment. And in this case, we would get, we would be able to pump that saved money back into the actual capital cost of the project, so we could build more. And that is something that I think we've had our eyes closed about as well. And so Infrastructure Minister Chris Bishop last week, I think the government's recognised this problem. He's talked about, we're going to have $30 billion more in the pipeline. A pipeline is but a ghost, it is but a phantom, unless you have confidence and you can see those projects coming out and being built. So while I think the government's done some really good work on building the system that delivers and funds infrastructure, we've actually got to see projects enter the market. And over the last year, that reduction in our construction industry activity, we've seen 17,000 people leave construction. And this is what New Zealand does. It's a small economy. It's a small construction sector comparatively. And when the headwinds come, and the headwinds these days look like a change of government often, because the government comes in, stops, reprograms, cancels projects, the pipeline becomes less certain. When that tap gets turned off, businesses have to lay people off really significantly. And of course, the ability for them to then rebuild, it takes a lot of time. And so the productivity is sluggish as a result. It's not just governments changing things, but it's also the economic reality of being in a recessionary place for the last couple of years, in and out. That's been a real challenge as well for infrastructure and construction generally. And that, because we're small, we're susceptible to getting battered round. What we've got to do is have more consistency and clarity in our pipeline. And it's why the infrastructure sector bangs on about this need for bipartisanship. If we had certainty about what was going to be built over the next 5 to 10 years, and we had political buy-in, particularly between the two major parties. So when the government changed,
I'll stop you right there, Nick, because I'll stop you right there because I've got Chris Hipkins waiting on the line shortly after this and going to ask me exactly about what you've just pointed there, about whether we can actually get to a place where you can actually agree to carry on with some stuff.
Garth, if we want to be more productive, if we want to get more bang for our buck, getting political agreement on more stuff is vital.
Nick Leggett, Infrastructure New Zealand Chief Executive, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Good morning.